Morning, Alex.
Good morning, John.
Welcome to the Red Mallard Marketing Podcast. We're going to be discussing content marketing on a budget.
It's come up a lot lately.
Why has it come up, Alex?
Well, I think in the kinds of people that we're talking to in Orange County, especially, there's a strong sense of an economic downturn on the horizon, and they're pulling back their budgets. I think there's a lot of things going on with that. I feel like the marketing industry as a whole is undergoing this incredible shift. Lots of people looking for work right now who are experienced marketing people. So I think there's more to it than just reluctance to invest right now. But anyway, it does mean that there's more interest in smaller projects. How do I get the most impact for my marketing dollar?
Those are things that people ask all the time, but especially right now in this kind of area where we have inflation. We're in a recession, or we think a recession's coming, or we're afraid to say we're in a recession. Prioritizing your story is an evergreen initiative. Your story as a company or as a professional is told whether you like it or not. But if you focus on telling it with a budget or on a streamlined budget, you're still telling it. You're still doing something. And it's that Red Mallard is a good case study in terms of, the whole cobbler's shoe thing, where we are actively telling other people's story, and we've neglected our own for a long time. Well, that's part and part with this podcast and more videos that we've been putting out. You have to either decide that your story is worth telling or it's not worth telling. And if it's not worth telling, there's something to unpack there. There's a block of your confidence in the business. There's a block of something to do with growth or how big you want the business to get. And if that's the case, own it or tell your story. We've had clients that just want very streamlined services because that's the pace of the business that they want. That's the pace of their life they want ultimately. And that's great. At least you're doing something. But if you're not doing anything, now is the time to pick up a microphone like we're doing and start a podcast. We have a great client, Thermalvac Technology, and it just kind of happened out of happenstance where we're redoing a website for them. And initially it was like, oh, we don't need a blog. We don't need a blog. We don't need to put out content because we get enough business from our current customers. And then all of a sudden the question came out, well, where are we going to put our events? Where are we going to tell people what we're doing? Well, in a sense, that's a blog. But then the other thing was, this is there's a great leader at Thermalvac Technology, Heather Falcone. And I told her, I'm like, you got to do a podcast. If anybody should do a podcast, you should do a podcast. So this is my out in public throwing down the gauntlet, Heather, time to start a podcast. But that's the kind of thing that we've done for another client. For our client foundation, we started to help them build a podcast studio by hiring the right people to go in there and do it. And now they're producing content on a regular basis. And it's a commitment to the idea. But you can look around, you could throw a rock into a crowd and probably hit 5 podcast hosts. There are lots of podcasts out there, to be sure. But why? People listen to them. Not everybody is a Joe Rogan, but we don't all have to be a Joe Rogan. I sent you an article this morning from the Wall Street Journal that a friend sent me talking about this podcast that releases 12 episodes a year, but these episodes are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours long in multi-part episodes because the hosts do an incredible amount of research on businesses. And it's probably now the most popular podcast about business that's out there, making a significant amount of money for these hosts because they do deep dives, and that's what they're known for. And they don't even call it a podcast. They call it a conversational audiobook or something like that. And it's called Acquired.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about not having to be Joe Rogan. People have a lot of anxiety about putting themselves out there because the standards are very high at the high end of the market. And that's true for podcasting as it is for everything else. Podcasting is a very professionalized industry at the high end, but you can do simple things. We're doing something very simple here, and it's about keeping the oar in the water, helping people to have another channel to understand who you are. Because that's really ultimately a lot of not every business, but a lot of businesses, it's relational, and they want to know who they're doing business with.
Right.
So a lot of it's just putting yourself out there and helping people to be able to see you, hear you, get a feel for who you are as a person, as a professional.
Totally. When our podcast gets to like 100 downloads, that'll be amazing because 100 people listening, we know it's not 98 of them are not our moms. Let's say 10 of them are potential customers. That's just one other touch point. So that's the whole thing with content marketing on a budget. You don't have to hire an agency like Red Mallard. At a certain point, you should have help. It doesn't, you don't have to go an agency. You could go a hand-pick list of freelancers. That's how I started the business, was finding freelancers to do the stuff I was selling. Those were always those fun moments where, oh, I just sold a website. I should probably find somebody that builds websites. And that's the kind of thing that sometimes still happens. I had the guy in mind, but I never asked him to do it before. When I told Foundation to build a podcast studio, I knew this guy could do it. I knew he was the right guy for it, but I'd never sold it before. And so if you've got that kind of ability to throw ideas out there, then find people to help you fulfill the ideas. And that can really be a simple thing to do when it comes to just building out a content marketing program. You need to have a blog. You need to have a regular cadence for the blog. We always frown upon people saying, oh, we could do a quarterly blog post or a quarterly newsletter. And I only say that because it's not that hard to do a monthly one. But if you're going to do something and quarterly is what you can commit to, then commit to quarterly and just make it the big splash. It's the quarterly update from ABC company, and then you have social media posts that could jettison from that quarterly thing that could be your monthly cadence. So why don't you, Alex, talk about, since you're kind of our content strategist maven, if you will. I apologize. That's what I call you behind your back. But, building out a content calendar doesn't have to be complicated. And what would you say are the core functions, the core principles of a successful content calendar?
I think it depends a little bit on what the company's trying to accomplish with its content marketing. Content marketing is all about building up a library of assets. And some of those assets have short-term purposes, like an email campaign. That's pretty short-term. If you're not getting traction within the first 3 days, chances are pretty low it's going to keep delivering value. Blog post can be on your website for years and still attract attention. The other day I was Googling something. That's an outmoded way of searching for things these days. But nevertheless, I was searching for something and I found a blog post that was great, and it was 8 years old. That company's still getting attention 8 years later. They're the #1 hit on Google for this particular topic. And that's kind of the pie in the sky goal, is you build these assets that have long-term value to your business. Now, a lot of people are in a hurry. They want to grow by 50% in 1 year. How do they do that? There are still ways to do that without necessarily investing heavily in lots of that long-term stuff. You can invest in short-term stuff. You can invest in email marketing, in really targeting your particular audience that you're trying to reach. If you're trying to sell widgets to a very specific subset of the market, you can target that market without spending a fortune, because once you've identified it and narrowed it down, the database tools that we have available, we can do those kinds of things. So I think part of it is being flexible, adaptable. But to get back to the content calendar idea, I think there are two potential avenues. One is to just say, okay, we're going to be the source of basic information about what we do. So in Red Mallard's case, we just put out content that's content marketing 101. So somebody who's trying to answer the question, what do I need to do for a B2B blog to be successful? And they search it, and lo and behold, here comes Red Mallard. Now, of course, that's a particular topic that's so hard to get ranked for that we're not even trying. But a lot of the businesses that are out there are in niche industries that don't have a ton of marketing to compete with. So there are lots of opportunities to gain attention from the people who are looking for solutions that you sell. And they're thinking at first, maybe I can do this on my own. Maybe I can, find the brazing shop to handle my products. Like they make, golf clubs or something like that. And they're trying to find a new brazing shop because their last one sucked. And, they're Googling the question, what do I need to do to qualify a brazing shop? Kind of going back to square one. And the first thing they find is your website talking about how to qualify a brazing shop. And they say, well, maybe I need to call these guys.
I was sitting next to a former client yesterday, Dan Whitaker of Whitaker. They're a great accounting CPA firm in Seal Beach. and longtime friends, and he was commenting how on one of their blogs is all about how to turn your RV, into a write-off, basically. And he's like, we get a ton of traffic to that because probably a lot of business owners who like to justify their toy purchases and find a way to make them a component of the business. I said, well, I might get a trailer and wrap it in red Mallard stuff. And he's like, I still wouldn't consider that a write-off. And I'm like, well, Dan, it's a billboard. So, we're not always going to agree with our CPAs, but this blog post gets a ton of traffic, which means it's a question people are asking. And so one of the things we talked about was, they've got a call to action at the end of the blog post, and, but what else could they do? And I said, well, why don't you guys throw up a pop-up onto that blog post? If it's getting you a ton of traction, but it's not converting, and by traction, I mean visitors, unique visitors on a consistent basis, at the first scroll, have a pop-up come up and say, hey, do you have an RV, or are you a business owner? Based on why you're here, you might need a consult. Like right now is probably the season in May where people are evaluating the experience of their most recent, filing. Some people might be questioning whether or not they like their accountant. So now's a good time to throw out there like, hey, who's going to do this work for you next year? Or right. You like this blog, sign up for more. So things like that, where if you look at the analytics of your website, look at your most popular blog post. Like Alex said, the value of a blog post can be years and years and years. Build some engagement opportunities into that blog post. Don't neglect it, leverage it. And it's not hard. It will take you $50 or an hour to throw a pop-up on there and have it go into your CRM and track conversions. If you're getting 1,000 people going to a blog post a month, if 10 people sign up for your newsletter or sign up for a consultation and one of them closes and that blog post was written 5 years ago, that's pretty good ROI.
I think with the rise of AI and how that's going to have impact on the way content is created, and blogging maybe becomes something that's so easy because people just throw out a prompt into ChatGPT and they get a mediocre article that doesn't say anything, but it has a lot of words in it, and they post it on their website. I mean, those I think will not be ranked very well because Google will be able to see that it's nonsense, but it will also potentially impact the way people interact with those articles for the worse. It's really not clear yet how that's going to impact things. But another way to do it and stay on a budget is to build a little landing page, build a white paper that is addressing a really critical topic for your industry, and you gate it behind a little form that you have to fill out. And that way you're identifying highly motivated prospects that are really interested in what you do and looking for solutions that you offer. You give them all of the basic information about what you do, but of course you leave out the part that matters the most, or maybe you don't, because the thing that matters the most is the actual doing of what your services are. We're working with a medical billing provider, and in that industry, the thing that matters is the doing of the billing, and it's very detail oriented. It's not the kind of thing you can tell people all day long what you do, but they still will have no idea how to do it themselves. They need you. So they're a perfect candidate for that sort of thing, because somebody's Googling, how the heck do I get where I need to be with billing insurance? And doctors don't really have time for that sort of stuff, but they do a little bit of cursory searching and they find the guide on how to make it work. And they say, oh, wow, these people have it figured out.
I've said this about myself, and I've said it to clients for years. You believing you are the expert does more for your clients and your marketplace than probably anything you can do. But it has to start with there. You have to start with that belief that I am the expert. If you don't have that belief, or you need to work on it, working with Red Mallard is a great place to start. Or any kind of marketing consultant or business consultant, because they will help you find the innovation, the nuggets, the gold, amongst the pebbles of what you would consider just regular stuff. They'll help you see that it's gold and that it can tell stories and it can help your business move forward into the next chapter of things. Where these economic downturns, these economic kerfuffles, whatever they are, they're always going to happen. We've seen it, history is clear. there's always going to be situations and reasons to pivot, downsize, be agile, but more importantly, innovate. And this is why we're pushing into more AI understanding and technology. We're pushing into telling our story, because you got to make it matter. If it doesn't matter to you, it won't matter to anybody else. And that's, for us, is one of our core services, is really just digging in. We can write blog posts all day long, but if we can help you see the beauty of your business and how innovative you are, then I feel like the sky's the limit for where you can go.
Exactly. And it doesn't need to cost a fortune.
That's even more crucial. All right, Alex, thank you for your time. We will see you on the next episode of Red Mallard Marketing Podcast. You can go to redmallard.com. You're obviously already listening to this, so you already got it through Spotify or Apple, but we also stream the show now on YouTube, so you can check it out there. Have a good day, Alex.
You too, John.